My name is Nora. I'm 34, and I oversee operations for a hospitality group that turns roughly 3,400 covers a week across 5 kitchens. I can tell you where a ticket lives at any second of its life the way other people recite their own phone number. So when my parents broke 31 months of dead silence with a phone call, inviting me to a healing dinner, I should have run one calculation before I answered. Who is actually going to be at that table? I skipped the math. I drove 50 minutes to a place called the Ashford, pushed through the front doors, and walked into a private room where 19 relatives were already seated under a mountain of seared scallops, tomahawk steaks, and a bottle of Burgundy that cost more than my monthly insurance, a bottle they'd cracked open before I'd even hit the highway off-ramp. My father raised his eyes from the head of the table, smiled easy, and said the sentence I'd spent 34 years being groomed to hear. "You've got this, right? It's the least you can do for us." He was sure he'd boxed me in. What he hadn't planned for was the single sentence I was about to murmur to our server, or the way his own credit card would announce the real state of his finances to 19 people 20 minutes later. Welcome back to the channel, where ordinary people walk into impossible family moments and walk out still owning themselves. If you've ever been the one everybody assumes will cover it, fix it, and stay quiet, stay with me. Leave a comment, tap subscribe, and let me rewind a few weeks. I don't own 5 restaurants. I run them. I started at 15 wiping tables at a barbecue joint outside Chattanooga, going to school the next morning still smelling like hickory smoke. Host at 18, line server at 20, shift lead by 23, multi-unit operations by 31. I'm not wealthy. I have a small townhouse I paid off 2 years ago, a retirement account I pretend doesn't exist, and one habit I allow myself: fizzy water. Still or sparkling, that's my whole order, every time I sit in someone else's dining room. My team thinks it's a quirk. It isn't. When you spend your childhood covering everyone else's plate, you learn to keep your own tab small enough to walk away from. The morning the message came, I was in my office comparing quotes for a coffee roaster contract, the kind of forgettable Wednesday that lulls you into thinking everyone's life runs on par sheets. My phone lit up, and something cold slid in under my ribs. 2.5 years of nothing, and there it was, a ping from a thread I'd been deleted from the day I became the family's official disappointment. The little sunflower icon my mother had chosen years earlier, back when it was nothing but pie recipes and photos of my niece's rabbit. The history was blank, which told me they'd either scrubbed it or, more likely, they'd been running a second thread without me the whole time. Mom's message read warm and careful and just slightly over-rehearsed. She and Dad had done a lot of reflecting, she wrote, and wanted me at the Ashford to start mending things as a family. Just the 4 of us, her, Dad, me, and my brother Cole. An intimate dinner. A clean slate. Then, 30 seconds later, the line that should have set off every alarm I owned. Blood looks after blood. Honey. It's time we all remembered that. She'd used that exact phrase when I was 19 and she needed my tip money to keep the power on. At 22, when Dad wanted my name on the loan for his van. When Cole's first lease collapsed and I quietly wired the deposit. In our house, blood looks after blood had only ever meant one thing: Nora looks after everyone. I read it twice. What struck me was the word she never typed. Not sorry. Not we were wrong. Just time to heal. No subject, no owner, nobody holding the bag. Grammar built to dodge blame. I typed back 3 words. I'll be there. Then I flipped my phone face down and pretended my fingers weren't unsteady. Let me tell you why they cut me off. 2.5 years ago, my brother Cole announced he was opening a boutique gym. No business plan, no study. A gym, because he'd wandered into a nice one visiting a friend in Austin and thought, I could run one of these. He was 28, had never supervised more than a fantasy football league, and needed a $90,000 loan. The bank was willing, with a co-signer. That co-signer was penciled in as me before anyone asked. Mom phoned on a Sunday, Dad beside her, arms already crossed. Cole needed the money. The gym was his dream. I had solid credit and a lifelong record of saying yes. Just put your name on it, Nora. I asked to see the numbers. He didn't have any. I asked about projected membership, lease terms, equipment financing. He looked at me like I'd spat in his protein shake. Mom's voice flattened. He's your brother. You don't need a spreadsheet to love your own brother. I said no. Not because I didn't love Cole, I did. But I'd watched enough people torch their savings on daydreams with no foundation, and I knew what 90,000 of someone else's debt feels like at 3 in the morning when the doors are locked and the note is still due. Dad stood up, pointed at the front door, and delivered the line that sealed it shut. If you won't stand by this family, then you're not in it. I drove home. By morning, I'd been removed from the thread. No call. No text. For 2.5 years, I was the daughter who loved her bank balance more than her brother. Here's the part one hate admitting. The silence nearly finished me. Not because they were right, they weren't. Because I missed being needed. It took 18 months and a counselor named Dr. Ferris before I could name it. I'd been the family's repair service since I was 15. First paycheck, groceries, first tax refund, Mom's crown. When Dad's water heater died, I paid and swore it was under warranty, because I knew he'd never take a handout from his daughter's hands directly. When Cole got married, I covered the venue deposit, the DJ, half the catering, and clapped while Mom toasted the 2 wonderful children I raised. 2 wonderful children. 1 invoice. I didn't do it because I'm generous. I did it because somewhere around 13 I figured out the fastest route to peace in that house was making sure nobody had to ask twice. Ask once, Nora pays, everyone relaxes. I trained them. I taught my own parents that my wallet was a vending machine. Feed it guilt, out comes a check. And the day the machine flashed out of order, they didn't fix it. They yanked the plug and strolled off. So when Mom's message surfaced, I felt the old reflex fire. Go. Smooth it over. Pay whatever it runs. But underneath it I heard Dr. Ferris, steady as a ticking clock. You taught them you'd always pay. Unteaching them isn't paying more. It's finally stopping. My colleague Priya caught it instantly. Over lunch she set down her fork and said, Nora, this has a setup written all over it. My exec chef Danny gave his 1-syllable review. Don't. But I'd made up my mind. Not because I trusted it, and not because I expected an apology. I wanted to sit across from my parents and learn whether 2.5 years had changed anything, or whether the silence was just a longer version of the same conversation, the one where my role was to nod, agree, and pay. I wanted an ending. And, I'll be straight with you, I missed my mother. Not the strategist. Not the scorekeeper. The one who taught me to flip pancakes at 8 and hummed old country songs while the griddle warmed. That mother hadn't called in 2.5 years either. But some nights I still heard the humming. I set one rule. 1 dinner. Polite. No money. The second it felt like a trap, I'd be gone before dessert. I wrote it on a sticky note and pressed it to my dash. 1 dinner. Then home. I dressed plain on purpose. Charcoal trousers, a soft blue top I keep for vendor meetings, flats. No jewelry except the steel watch I bought myself the year I made multi-unit. This family already told itself I flaunted my success. The reality was a 9-year-old sedan and Sunday meal prep like half the country. 50 minutes of highway. No music. Hands at 10 and 2. Near the interchange my stomach nodded the way it does when a walk-in cooler dies on a Saturday night and I already know the next 6 hours will bleed. Instinct. My body understood something my brain was still bargaining with. I nearly bailed at the exit. But I thought about those pancakes and Dr. Ferris's clock, and I kept driving. Dad's van sat in the 4th row, same crumpled rear panel he'd never fixed. Mom's sedan beside it. Fine. Then I spotted Aunt Carol's cream SUV. Uncle Ray's pickup. Cole's hatchback, still wearing the faded sticker from the gym that shuttered 9 months after it opened. 3 more cars I knew. A couple I didn't. Just the 4 of us. Mom had written. I counted 11 vehicles. I sat 2 full minutes, rereading the note. 1 dinner. Then home. The smart move was to reverse out and drive back to my leftovers. But I got out. I was 34, I'd spent 2.5 years learning to stop running, and I wasn't going to restart in a parking lot on a Thursday. Inside, the lobby smelled like thyme and warm bread and money. A host in black checked her screen. Whitaker party. They're already seated. She said it in the specific tone hosts use when a big top has run them ragged for an hour. I'd worn that exact face 1,000 times. She grabbed a single menu. Just you. I heard them before I saw them. Laughter, glasses clinking, Aunt Carol's unmistakable bark cutting through the room. I rounded the corner. 19 chairs, everyone filled except the single empty seat at the far end, directly across the table's length from my father. White linen, low candles, platters I could price from 10 feet, seared scallops fanned over ice, short rib sliders on a tiered stand, a cheese board the size of a card table. Dead center, a Grand Cru Burgundy, roughly 400 retail, already 3/4 gone. They'd been ordering with both hands. My mother clocked me first, rose with both arms open, and every head swung around. Nora! Oh, sweetheart, look at you. Applause. Genuine applause, like I was a soldier home from deployment and not the daughter they'd frozen out for 1,000 days. Uncle Ray whistled. Aunt Carol dabbed her eyes. Cole lifted his glass and gave me a smile with plenty of teeth and no warmth. 19 people. Just the 4 of us. Mom had written. I sat. What else do you do when 19 faces are watching, the chairs pulled out, and a server is filling your glass before your bag hits the floor? I sat and I smiled, because 15 years of front of house gives you the ability to smile while your brain runs a full threat assessment underneath. We wanted it to be a surprise, Mom glowed. The whole family, just like the old days. I thought it was just the 4 of us. She waved a hand like shooing a gnat. Well, once Carol heard, and then Ray, and then your cousin Dana, it just snowballed. You know how family is. I knew exactly how family was. Dad sat at the head, slicing a slider like a holiday roast. Cole to his left, phone in one hand, wine in the other. Cousins I hadn't spoken to since a Thanksgiving 6 years back filled the rest, plus one of Carol's neighbors I'd never seen in my life, apparently here eating scallops. Mom leaned in and squeezed my hand. See? Blood looks after blood. Same words, same warm wrapping, same target. I squeezed back and said nothing. I was counting plates. My father is the kind of man who orders for the table. Doesn't ask, orders. He flagged the server, a kid barely out of his teens running on caffeine and nerves, and rattled off additions without a menu. Another round of scallops. 2 more slider boards. And bring another bottle of the Burgundy. The Grand Cru. The good one. He said, the good one, loud enough for the next tables. Then he held up a credit card between 2 fingers like a magician flashing a coin. Put it all on this. We're celebrating tonight. Something was off. I grew up watching this man argue over the price of a wiper blade, return a shirt because it rang up $8 over the sign. Dad did not buy $400 wine. This was theater, aimed at me. Look how well we're doing, Nora. Look how little we ever needed you. Except Mom's handbag, the same one she'd carried since I was in high school, sat beside her with a broken strap safety pinned together. They were performing. I just didn't know the ticket price yet. The little cuts started around the second bottle. Aunt Carol leaned past Uncle Ray. Must be nice, running fancy restaurants while the rest of us clip coupons. Cousin Dana asked if I ever felt guilty living so well while my parents went through a rough patch nobody had mentioned to me. Cole eyes on his phone. She wouldn't know. She hasn't been around. Each remark landed with the precision of something practiced, aligned, the way a choir finds the same note without a baton. Nora left. Nora has plenty. Nora owes. Aunt Carol delivered the thesis, taking my hand like she was comforting me at a funeral. Family doesn't keep score, dear. I nearly laughed. From a woman who once stopped speaking to her daughter-in-law for half a year over a seating chart. I slid my hand free and picked up my glass. Sparkling water. The only thing I'd ordered. 19 people drowning in scallops and burgundy, and me at the end with fizzy water like the designated driver at a bachelor party. The young server, his tag read Marcus, passed behind me. Just the water tonight? Just the water. He nodded like he understood something I hadn't said out loud. 19, maybe 20. Thin the way restaurant kids are before they learn to eat between rushes. Fast but careful, the way new servers move when the party's too big and one wrong plate means a manager conversation they can't afford. I recognized every inch of him, because I'd been him. He was running our 19 top nearly alone and never once sighed. He topped off my water without being asked, caught me studying the table, and murmured, "Long night." I almost told him the truth. Instead I said, "You're doing great." He blinked, startled, then stood a half-inch taller. I excused myself to the restroom around the 40-minute mark. I needed 2 minutes and a door that locked. On the marble edge sat a phone, screen still lit, case plastered in daisy stickers. Coles. He leaves things everywhere. I wasn't planning to look, but the notification banner was from a thread I'd never been added to, and the preview stopped my hand halfway to the towels. The thread was called Dinner Plan. 3 people, Mom, Dad, Cole. The most recent message, from Mom, "Don't tell Nora it's everyone. Once she's there with the whole family watching, she won't dare say no. She never could stand a scene." Beneath it, Dad, "Just make sure she's seated at my end. I'll handle the ask." Cole, 2 minutes later, "Order the good stuff before she shows. Once it's on the table, she can't exactly send it back lol." I scrolled. 3 weeks of it. Then the messages that turned my stomach to ice. Mom, 10 days back. The bank called again Thursday. We have to figure something out before June. Dad, Nora can carry us through spring. She's got more than enough. And the one that hit like a dropped sandbag. Mom, 8 days back. It's not asking for money. It's letting her back into the family. She should be grateful we're even offering her the chance. Grateful. They wanted me grateful for the privilege of being tricked into a 19-person dinner at a restaurant I'd never have chosen, so I could settle a bill I didn't order, to fix a crisis nobody told me about, for a family that erased me the last time I said no. I set the phone back exactly where I'd found it, face down. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I know what this is. I know what it costs. And for the first time in 15 years, I'm not paying it. The strangest part was how calm I felt. Not numb, not furious. Clear, the way a kitchen goes still in the last quiet second before a rush. If you've ever discovered you were loved for what you could hand over and not for who you are, you know how cold that tile felt. Stay with me. What I did next I planned in the time it takes to dry your hands. Subscribe so you don't miss where it lands. I walked back wearing the face I put on when a health inspector shows up unannounced. Pleasant, unreadable, fully operational. But I saw things now I'd missed. Mom kept flicking her eyes to Dad's wallet, like checking a countdown. Dad's laugh ran half a beat too loud. The second bottle was nearly dead and nobody suggested slowing, because why would they? They weren't paying. I was. Every scallop, every pore of that burgundy, was one more brick in the wall they were building around me, high enough that I couldn't climb out without making the scene I'd spent my whole life dodging. I started asking questions. Casual ones. How's the gym, Cole? His glass paused halfway up. Oh, we closed. Market just wasn't there. That's a shame. How long did it run? 11 months. Mom jumped in before the silence could land. Cole's exploring other things. He's got so many talents. I turned to Dad. How's the contracting? Still doing commercial jobs? His jaw tightened for half a second, a tell I'd cataloged before I could drive. Between projects. Economy's rough. You know how it is. I did know. Because I'd read The Bank Called Again Thursday on his son's phone 10 minutes earlier. The man who just ordered 2 rounds of scallops and a $400 bottle was performing Solvency the way a community theater actor performs Shakespeare. Loud, committed, and completely unconvincing to anyone who's seen the real thing. People tell you everything when they think you're the bank. Every sentence was a window into a house on fire, while they all stood on the lawn insisting the smoke was just the grill. The pressure built the way it always does in my family, not a direct question but a current. Aunt Carol sighed. Must be so rewarding, doing well. Some of us aren't so lucky. Cousin Tyler, you really landed on your feet. Even Uncle Ray, who communicates exclusively through sports metaphors, managed, you knocked it out of the park, kid. Each compliment a brick, all pointed the same way. You have money. We see it. And we're reminding you in front of witnesses. Mom ran it all from the center like a conductor who'd memorized the score. I used to think she was just a warm woman who loved to host. Now I understood she was a project manager with a 20-year track record, and her flagship deliverable was sitting at the end of the table drinking fizzy water. Cole cracked the surface. 3 glasses of Burgundy in, he leaned across, grinning like we shared a joke. Relax, big sis. It's just dinner. You can afford it. I set my water down. Afford what? This. He gestured at the whole table. We got the good stuff since you're treating. Since you're treating. Like it had been decided in a meeting I wasn't invited to, which, of course, it had. The table went quiet for 3 seconds. Mom shot Cole a look that said too early. He shrugged like he'd knocked over a vase he had no plans to pick up. Cole had just confirmed out loud what every person in that room already knew. I was the mark. This whole dinner was a heist. And every scallop was evidence. A little later, Cousin Dana, the one relative who'd texted me a quiet, thinking of you, during the silence, asked, so you run a bunch of restaurants now? I kept it plain. Multi-unit operations director. 5 locations. Staffing, vendors, compliance, the financials, everything from the loading dock to the final check. The word financials hit that table like a rock through glass. Aunt Carol's fork stopped. Cole's scrolling thumb froze. They'd built the entire evening on the assumption I was successful enough to pay. But hearing the scope was different from assuming it. They'd pictured a well-paid waitress who got lucky. They hadn't pictured someone who could read a P&L faster than a menu, who knew to the penny what 19 scallop plates and 2 bottles of Grand Cru cost before the folio ever arrived. The power hadn't moved yet. But it had loosened. Dad waited for dessert. Strategic, I'll give him that. The souffle had landed. The second bottle sat upside down in the ice bucket, every face soft with the contentment of a meal you didn't pay for and don't intend to. He set down his fork and folded his hands, the gesture I'd watched him make before signing contracts, before telling me at 22 he needed a co-signer, just this once. Nora, he smiled, you've got this, right? It's the least you can do for us. 19 people heard it. Marcus, refilling coffee behind me, heard it. Mom nodded. Cole smirked. Aunt Carol reached for more bread like the matter was closed. 2.5 years of silence, and not one person had said sorry, or that they'd been wrong, or that they'd missed me for any reason other than my credit limit. I looked at my father across a table strewn with the wreckage of a meal I hadn't ordered, holding a glass of water I'd poured myself, and I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Because the decision I'd been scared to make had just been made for me. I didn't answer right away. Silence does more work than words in a room full of people used to being agreed with. 3 seconds. 5. The kind that makes 19 people suddenly find the wall behind you fascinating. For 15 years I'd paid so no one would make a scene. 15 years, thousands of dollars, and the cover charge for admission to my own family had just been announced to the room at roughly 80 a plate, plus wine, plus the special tax that comes with being the child they only call when something needs funding. I laid my napkin on the table. I smiled. "Let me go take care of things," I said and stood. Mom exhaled. Dad unfolded his hands. Every one of them thought I was going to pay. Here's what 15 years behind a host stand teaches you. The person who controls the check controls the room. My family thought they controlled it. They had 19 people, 2 dead bottles, and years of built-up pressure. I had 2 sentences and a server named Marcus. If a quiet boundary has ever rerouted your whole life, if you've walked into a room where everyone expected you to fold and you didn't, hit subscribe. You'll want to see where this lands. I didn't walk toward the register. I walked to the service station at the back, where Marcus was staging check presenters and a floor manager named Devin reviewed a ticket. "Excuse me, Devin?" He turned. "How can I help?" I kept my voice low, the volume you use in this business when you're handling something the dining room doesn't need to hear. 2 sentences. "I'm not the host, and I won't be covering this table tonight. Please bring the full check to the gentleman at the head, the one whose card is already on file for the reservation." Devin blinked, glanced at Marcus, back at me. "And the second thing?" "Split my sparkling water onto its own check, and add 30% to mine for your team. They earned it tonight." Marcus's eyes widened a fraction. Devin read me for 3 full seconds, the way a good floor manager reads every situation, fast and without judgment. "Done. No argument." "No, are you sure, ma'am?" Because Devin had done this long enough to recognize a redirect, and Marcus had watched that table long enough to understand why one was needed. I paid my own check on the spot. 1 water, 2 refills, plus a tip that would be the biggest Marcus had seen in a month. "I'll present the table's check in about 10 minutes, Devin said quietly, "once dessert clears." Those 10 minutes were the most peaceful of my night. The table didn't know it yet, but the meal was over in every way that counted. The food was eaten, the wine was gone, the ask had been made, and the answer had already been delivered in a language none of them spoke. I almost felt something, watching Mom laugh at something Dana said, a real laugh that made her sound, for exactly 3 seconds, like the woman who used to hum in the kitchen. Almost. Then I watched Dad checking his phone under the table with the tight-jawed focus of a man waiting on a text he didn't want, and I remembered the line from Cole's phone. "Nora can carry us through spring." I watched the bubbles rise and pop in my glass, each a tiny implosion nobody noticed. 15-year-old me would have paid, pulled out her card, covered the whole table, called it love, gone home, and cried in the shower without telling a soul. I wasn't that girl anymore. Marcus appeared at the edge of the room, and I knew, before his first step, exactly whose chair he was walking toward. He set the leather presenter down directly in front of my father. Not the center. Not near me. In front of Frank Whitaker, the man who'd made the reservation, whose card was on file, who'd told the table 2 hours ago to put it all on this. The conversation died like a candle in a draft. Dad stared at the folio 2 full seconds. "The check was supposed to go to Nora. The check is in front of me." Mom's eyes went wide. She looked at me, then the check, then me, and for the first time all night her composure cracked enough to show the math behind it. Dad recovered first. He'd spent 65 years never admitting he'd been caught off guard. He flicked the folio open with a casual snap and did not look at the total. He couldn't. If he looked in front of 19 people, the performance ended. "I've got it," he said, handing his card to Marcus without breaking eye contact with me. "We're celebrating, remember?" Marcus took it. "Right back, sir." He said it gently. The way you say things when you know what's coming and the other person doesn't. Dad leaned back, arms crossed, smiling with the full confidence of a man certain his card would rescue him. Marcus returned in 4 minutes. He leaned down beside my father's chair and said, at a volume built to be discreet but heard by a table gone quiet enough to hear ice settle, "I'm sorry, sir. The card's been declined." Nobody moved. Dad's smile held 1 more second, a reflex, like a light that stays lit after the switch flips. Then it went dark. "Run it again." Marcus came back in 2 minutes, same gentle voice. "Still not going through, sir. Would you like to try another?" Dad's fingers moved through his wallet. 1 card, another, then a third pulled from behind his license like the last round in a chamber he'd forgotten he loaded. 19 people. No forks. No wine. No laughter. Just the sound of 65 years of a man's pride compressing into a wallet he couldn't close fast enough. Marcus came back a 3rd time. He didn't need to speak. His face said it. Dad looked at me, not with anger, not yet, but with the raw, unguarded expression of a man who's just realized, in front of everyone who matters to him, that the net he'd counted on was gone and the ground was exactly as hard as he'd always feared. I picked up my sparkling water, took a sip, set it down. "I don't owe you," I said. "I never did." Dad's chair scraped back with a sound like tearing paper. "Nora, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Dad. Your card was declined. That's between you and your bank. You were supposed to." He caught himself, but not fast enough. The sentence hung there, unfinished, visible to everyone. "You were supposed to pay." Mom started crying, the performing kind, with gasps and dabbing and enough volume to recruit sympathy from the next table. "After everything we've done for you, after I carried you, what did you do for me, Mom?" My voice stayed level. I didn't lean in. "Tell me, in front of everyone, what did you do for me in the last 2.5 years?" Cole slapped the table. "This is so typical. You always make everything about you." Aunt Carol reached for my arm. "Nora, dear, your father's clearly embarrassed. Can't you just—" "No." 1 word, said the way I'd say it to a vendor who tried to short an invoice. Clear, final, no apology. Then Dad broke. Not with anger, with something worse. His voice dropped, and for one honest, terrible moment he sounded like a man standing in a house with the lights shut off. "Nora, please. We're drowning." I saw him. The scared man behind the performance, the father who'd lost his business and his pride and couldn't say it out loud until his own card said it for him. It ached. Then he added, "And you'd let us?" And the ache stopped. Because even drowning, he was reaching for my wallet instead of my hand. I stood. Not fast, not dramatic. The way you stand when the decision is made and you don't need the room's permission to leave. "Dad, I'm sorry you're struggling. I mean that. But this," I gestured at the empty platters, the appended bottles, the 19 faces watching me like the villain in a story they'd rehearsed all week. "This isn't asking for help. This is a trap. You didn't invite me to make amends. You invited me to make a payment." Mom's crying hardened. "That's not fair, Nora. We just wanted you back." "You wanted me back for what I could cover, Mom. I read the messages. She can carry us through spring." The table went white. Cole's face drained. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "If you need help, real help, I'll sit down with you and a financial counselor and we'll build a plan. No tricks, no audience, no scallops. But I'm not paying this bill. I didn't order it. I wasn't told about it. And I don't owe it to you. I don't owe you. I never did." Nobody spoke. I picked up my bag, looked at my mother, and said the last thing I'd say to her at that table. "You always told me blood looks after blood. So why was I the only one who ever did?" Then I walked toward the door, past the busser, past the host stand, past the heavy glass doors with the brass handles. Marcus caught me near the coat check, holding my receipt. Thank you. Quiet. Sincere. I touched his shoulder. You're doing great, I told him again. Then I walked out. The lot was still. Warm air, crickets starting up in the landscape trees that made the Ashford look like it belonged somewhere more important than a shopping strip. I read the sticky note still pressed to my dash. One dinner. Then home. I opened the thread on my phone. The messages were already flooding in. Mom, Aunt Carol, Cole, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, a cascade of exclamation points and the specific fury of people who've just been caught. I didn't read them. I scrolled to the bottom, tapped Leave Group, and watched the confirmation land. Nora has left the chat. I started the engine and drove home in the same silence I'd driven there in. Except this time the silence wasn't nervous. It was mine. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Nobody called that night, or the next day. The thread I'd left carried on without me. I know because Cousin Dana reached out separately a week later. That was the most honest thing anyone's done at a family dinner in 20 years, she wrote. I'm sorry I was part of it. Dana was the only one who apologized. 3 weeks later Cole texted. Not to say sorry, to ask if I could float first and last month's rent on a new apartment. I sent back the name of a financial counseling service and wished him well. He didn't reply. Through Dana I learned the rest in pieces. Dad's business had folded a year and a half before the dinner. Bad bets on 2 commercial projects. Mom had been covering minimums on 4 cards with a maxed home equity line. The house went on the market in July. They moved to a smaller rental a half-hour south. Cole took a job answering phones at a dental office. None of it was what I wanted for them. All of it was the consequence of choices made long before I walked into the Ashford, and none of it was mine to fix. I did what I'd promised at the table. I called Dad 6 weeks later and offered to sit with him and a financial counselor. He hung up. I haven't called again. But the offer still stands. Here's what I learned. The most expensive thing you can ever buy is other people's comfort with your silence. And the night I stopped paying for it was the night I finally got rich. That's my story. 19 seats, 1 glass of water, and a credit card that told the truth nobody else at the table would. If you've ever been the family bank, hear me, helping is a choice, not a debt. And a boundary doesn't have to be loud to be unbreakable. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.